So what should you do? Should you have a lot of small practice sessions throughout the day and throughout the week? Or should you have a lot of practice time crammed together in one day? Is it beneficial to practice like 8, 16 hours in one day? Or is it just a waste of time, like, lifting weights and then going on beyond the point where you actually get growth or you strengthen your muscles? Because it can sometimes seem like that, right? We practice for so long that it seems like, hey, now I'm getting worse at what I'm trying to play. And it's just, it becomes harder and harder to play it. It's like the brain experiences some kind of fatigue. But I have a cool method for you and a distinction for you that we must bring with us when it comes to should we, practice in small segments. Practicing in small segments, just to give it to you right off the bat here, practicing in small segments is amazing when it comes to remembering things. If you want to remember fretboard shapes, or you want to remember the dots, the notes on the fretboard, whenever it's something visual, like a visual thing you want to remember, or it's a sequence of notes, or it's a sequence of anything, or a melody that you want to practice, right? Where you have to remember what does it do when, or a sequence of chords you want to remember because you have to play a gig tomorrow, right? Then some people think, or I used to think in the beginning, that if I practice the same sequence of 4 chords over and over again, then I would become good at it. It absolutely doesn't work. So please stick with me through this, because this is so important. You can save yourself so much practice time if you stop whenever you're good at it. When you remember the chords and you can play the 4 or 8 chords, in a circle, and it's no effort, it's just so easy because now you remember it, and 5 minutes ago you didn't, then stop. Because what you've done is you've loaded that sequential memory, or that memory of the chords or the notes or the melody, you've loaded it into your short-term memory. And it's going to stay there, but nothing happens by repeating it. Absolutely nothing. You can play it a million times, the same 8 chords or the same melody or the same solo, the same notes in the same order. You're not going to get any better at remembering them. What you must do is stop whenever it's easy. You got the sequence in your head, it's in your short term, it's loaded into your RAM. Now you want to put it in your ROM, and the only way to convince your brain of putting it in your long-term memory or your ROM is to stop practicing it, then forgetting it, and then relearning it again, at a later time, like an hour, 2 hours, whatever, and then load it into your short-term memory again, and then forget about it for the next 2 hours, and then do it again, and back and forth like that. Right? It's the only way, because then the brain eventually is going to say, hey, it takes up a huge amount of resources learning this all the time. So let's just store it in our hard drive so we can just, retrieve it whenever we want to. That's saving resources. And if there's one thing your brain is good at and focused on 24/7, it's saving resources. Nothing in your body gets more resources than it needs. Your liver, your heart, your lungs, everything is fine-tuned. Your muscles, if you work out or you run every day and then you stop running suddenly, your body's going to eat the muscles because it's going to save resources. Well, I don't need to maintain muscle mass if you're not using it, right? That's why when you break your leg, 2 weeks after, 4 weeks after you had it in, then it's completely, it's like, there's almost no muscle there because your brain is just going, we don't need that. So every time you're doing something that takes up resources, the brain is going to go, I don't like that, right? So when you do it again and again and again, the brain is going to say, okay, let's save this on our hard drive. So that's memory, right? But when it comes to developing motorical skills, like going patterns like that, or sequences, or picking patterns, right? Stuff like that. That's motorical patterns that you build into your nervous system. It's a completely different thing. And the key there is to practice with 0 mistakes, because what you practice, you become good at. And if you push for speed, which most people do, I do it too. I still do it because my brain is an idiot. It thinks that, we're going to practice guitar the way we throw spears, hunt animals, and gather roots and berries like 200,000 years ago. It doesn't work. So I have to slow down all the time and be conscious about, hey, take it easy. Back to making no mistakes, right? And then you get in thousands and thousands of repetitions, and it's easy because it's easy all the way. 1 pick stroke, super easy. 2 pick strokes, just as easy, right? It's when we push for speed that things become hard and we start making mistakes. Now we're practicing making mistakes. We do thousands and millions of mistakes, and that's what we become good at. And we have to struggle unlearning that again, which is impossible. to some degree. But but what we need to do when we try to practice a motorical skill, also when it comes to sports, kicking a ball, throwing a ball, all of that, whatever, using a scissor, it's the same thing. And then what we can really use is thousands of repetitions. And if you are working at a level where you're not straining and stressing yourself, which makes zero sense to the nervous system and your intuitive way of practicing, but if you're intelligent about practicing and building speed and accurate skills, then you are moving in a zone where it's easy all the time, really. And so that's what builds speed. And if you stay there, you can practice for days. You can practice from you get up in the morning till you go to bed at night. 16 hours a day. Really, you can. And when people say, no, you get injured, why would you get injured? Can you get injured doing this? Right? Is it, if you do this for 16 hours, am I, right? When I practice 16 hours in one day, my hands, especially my left hand, feels like it's dead. It's just like, it's when it gets cold. When I stop, 10, 20 minutes goes by and it feels like, I ruined my hand now because I can't move it. But then the next day, it's fine because I didn't strain it. I didn't do. I'm not doing any of that. So I can just keep practicing. And if you can't keep practicing, you're straining, you're stressing, you're pushing for speed, and you're making almost zero progress. So stop doing that. And then you can practice for 16 hours. See, now, a little side note here. When you do that though, and you repeat the same pattern over and over and over again, thousands and millions of times, then sometimes the brain can go into overload. And that's when you become worse at what you're trying to do. But my best advice here is to don't pull back. Keep practicing, but take down the speed. Because what you have now is a brain that goes, hey, I can't take any more repetitions. Let's not do this anymore, right? But you say, oh, yes, we are going to do it anymore. And sometimes I go down to half speed, but I keep practicing. It's me telling this lump of gray matter that I want this skill. I'm not going to go quietly into the night just because the brain goes, it's too many repetitions. I can't process them all. Well, you need to, right? So like the Marines say, once you think you cannot go any further, that's only 30% of your true capacity, right? When you say, I'm exhausted, it's not possible, then just slow it down and just keep doing it. So, it's like you take the importance of whatever you're trying to practice and bring it way up, survival style, right? Because if that's anything the brain has respect for, it's things that support our survival. And when we get obsessed about something, we act as if it was life and death. And whenever you get to that point where you do repetitions, relaxed, over and over again, it's easy, just over and over again, watching TV, YouTube, you're doing it absolutely perfectly because of course you practice that with total focus with a metronome, but now you can do it at a low level of speed. You just keep practicing. You can have a conversation with your friends, right? This is going on all the time, right? But you can't hear it, and you can even mute the strings like that. And then you keep doing that, and eventually your fingers are going to go, and your brain's going to go, and you can't play it as fast as that. You just keep going, just slow down. Because it sends a clear signal to the brain, I know we can't play it as fast, but I'm still going to get in the repetitions. I will not give up. I will not pull back. And you're not straining yourself. You can absolutely do this with no consequence to your body, no negative consequences, as long as you're in a position where you're really feeling good. You're sitting in the couch, you slouch back, you change positions all the time, get yourself a Strandberg Bowden to practice with, right? Where you can sit like this. That's once you play the Strandberg, you can find that in other videos. You constantly do this with your Strat when you're practicing, and it doesn't really balance there because it doesn't have that cutaway. So that's a very good piece of advice. It's also an expensive piece of advice because Strandberg Bowdens are not cheap, but they do make cheaper models now that you can get for about $1,000 US dollars, and buy those used. But so those are the two ways of practice. Whenever you have to remember something visually or sequentially, like numbers or notes or patterns on the fretboard, you want to have small 2-minute sessions or 1-minute session or 5-minute sessions loaded into your short-term memory. Forget about it, do something else, then come back to it. whenever you want to practice motorical skills, it's really beneficial to have great chunks of time where you can just lean back and just get in all the repetitions, because it becomes like a tick, like something like you do all the time, right? And you become good at those things that you do like that, right? I do this all the time. I did that when I was a child. This ADHD child does this all the time. I'm very good at that. I'm extremely good at this, right? And so if you just replace this, which is not really useful, with this, right? Right? Then you got something going for you. Then you can achieve mastery, and you're not talented. You don't have any special skills. You just have a normal nervous system like everyone else. But because you're doing this over and over again, and you don't stop, and it's easy all the time, right? Then you get extraordinary skills. It's crazy. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell icon, go download the free course, and check out the videos on the screen here in a second. See you.